My husband was sleeping with my sister. My mother knew. My money paid for their secret life. What do you do when your husband, sister, and mother betray you all at once? When your entire life shatters in an instant. It started 3 years ago when Stephen and I began trying for a baby. After months with no success, we started visiting fertility clinics. The doctors couldn't find anything specifically wrong, just unexplained infertility. I became obsessed with tracking ovulation, taking supplements, acupuncture, special diets, you name it, I tried it. Meanwhile, Stephen was supportive but always busy with work. His investment banking job meant late nights, weekend calls, and a constant stream of client meetings. I never questioned it because I was so focused on getting pregnant. The financial strain was enormous. Each round of treatment cost thousands, but Stephen assured me our savings could handle it. He managed our finances. I was too busy researching fertility treatments and working my ass off as a journalist to keep my mind occupied. I trusted him completely with our money. Big mistake. My younger sister Denise has always been the family favorite. She's gorgeous, was briefly a model in her 20s, and my mother practically worshipped the ground she walked on. We were never close. She was always competitive with me, but I chalked it up to normal sister stuff. When she announced her pregnancy at a family dinner 8 months ago, I was devastated, but tried to be happy for her. She was vague about who the father was, someone I'm seeing but it's complicated, and changed the subject when asked directly. My mother was ecstatic about Denise's pregnancy. She immediately started planning the baby shower, buying gifts, and calling me constantly with updates about Denise's appointments and cravings. It was like twisting the knife in the wound, but I tried to be understanding. I remember crying to Stephen about it, and he comforted me, saying, "Our time will come." The fucking audacity. I should have seen the warning signs. Like how Stephen always made excuses to miss my fertility appointments, but would drop everything when my mom called about Denise needing something. Or how he'd get defensive whenever I questioned our dwindling bank accounts. "Just trust me, I'm the one with the finance degree," he'd say. God, I was so fucking blind. Things started feeling off when I noticed our savings account was dwindling faster than it should. Stephen's explanations were always vague, market downturns, unexpected expenses. He'd get irritated when I asked for details. Red flag I ignored. Then there were the nights he'd come home smelling like a different cologne, or the mysterious texts he'd delete. More flags I explained away because I was so desperately focused on having a baby. There was this one night, about 5 months into Denise's pregnancy, when I found a receipt in Stephen's jacket for a $900 crib from this fancy baby boutique in Soho. When I confronted him, he claimed it was a gift for his coworker's baby shower. I actually believed him. Even called myself paranoid for suspecting anything. Looking back, I can't believe how many excuses I made for his behavior. Then came the night everything fell apart. 2:17 a.m., my phone rings. It's my mother, breathlessly announcing that Denise has gone into labor 3 weeks early. She wants me to come to Manhattan General right away. Stephen isn't home, another late meeting, and isn't answering his phone. I throw on clothes and drive to the hospital in a daze, wondering why my mother is so insistent I come immediately. The maternity ward is quiet when I arrive. I text my mother to let her know I'm there, and she responds that she's in room 302 with Denise. But as I approach the room, I hear voices, my mother's, Denise's, and Stephen's. I freeze outside the door, which is slightly ajar. She doesn't suspect anything, Stephen's saying. She's too obsessed with getting pregnant to notice where the money's actually going. My sisters laugh, followed by, well, it definitely wasn't going to fertility treatments that would never work anyway. At least I put your sperm to good use. Then my mother, you need to be more careful. Rachel's not stupid. What if she finds the transfer records? She doesn't have access to that account, Stephen replies. Besides, once the baby's born, we can figure out the next steps. Maybe I'll tell her I want a divorce. God knows I'm tired of pretending to try for a baby with her. I don't remember consciously doing it, but somehow I pulled out my phone and started recording. I stood there for 15 minutes while they discussed their arrangement, how Stephen had been sleeping with my sister for years, how my mother had encouraged it because Denise deserves a good provider, how they'd been using my money for Denise's pregnancy expenses while letting me pour thousands into fertility treatments they knew would never work. I felt physically sick listening to them. My mother actually said, "Rachel's always been too career-focused anyway. She wouldn't make as good a mother as Denise." My own mother. The same woman who had held me through every negative pregnancy test, who had pretended to support my fertility journey. It was like being stabbed in the heart while someone whispered, "This is for your own good." Something broke inside me in that moment. But instead of bursting and screaming like they probably deserved, I quietly walked away. I drove home in a state of shock, parked in our driveway, and sat there until sunrise, listening to the recording over and over. The worst part? As I listened to that recording for the 6th, 7th, 8th time, pieces started falling into place. The weekend trip Stephen took to decompress. The strange tension whenever Stephen and Denise were in the same room. How my mother would call Stephen directly about family matters instead of going through me. They'd been carrying on this betrayal right under my nose for years. I wish I could say I confronted them immediately, but that's not what happened. Instead, something cold and calculating took over. I realized that if I wanted justice, real justice, I needed to be smart. I needed evidence, a plan, and leverage. So I pretended I knew nothing. For the next 2 weeks, I played the role of concerned sister and wife perfectly. I visited Denise and her new baby boy in the hospital, smiling through gritted teeth as she named him after Stephen's grandfather. I comforted Stephen when he seemed stressed about work, all while methodically gathering evidence. I can still remember standing in that hospital room, holding the baby who should have been mine in every sense. Denise kept saying things like, "Isn't he beautiful? He has Stephen's eyes," without even realizing what she was revealing. My mother kept shooting her warning glances, but Denise was too drugged up on pain meds to filter herself. I just nodded and smiled while dying inside. The day I went back to their apartment to bring some supplies, I secretly photographed their mail, medical bills with both their names, a joint checking account statement, a fucking life insurance policy Stephen had taken out with Denise, and the baby as beneficiaries. I felt like I was in some kind of twisted nightmare, but the evidence kept piling up. I hired a private investigator who confirmed they'd been meeting at a hotel near Stephen's office for years. I contacted a forensic accountant who traced how Stephen had been diverting our savings, including my inheritance from my grandmother, into a separate account that paid for Denise's apartment, her medical bills, and a trust fund for the baby. Over $200,000 of MY money had gone to fund their betrayal. The forensic accountant, a no-nonsense woman named Judith, looked genuinely appalled as she walked me through the financial trail. In 20 years of doing this job, I've never seen such calculated financial infidelity, she told me. He created a perfect siphoning system. Every time I made a deposit, a percentage would automatically transfer to his secret account. He'd been planning this for years. My father had been quiet through all this. My parents had divorced when I was in college, and he'd remarried and moved to another state. We weren't close, but I needed an ally. I flew to Arizona to see him, bringing all my evidence. I'll never forget the look on his face as he listened to the recording, shock, then grief, then cold fury. "I always knew your mother was selfish," he said, "but this." He promised to help me however he could. I had always blamed my father for the divorce, believing my mother's story that he'd abandoned us for a younger woman. Sitting in his modest Arizona home, I finally asked for his version. What he told me changed everything. Apparently, my mother had been having affairs throughout their marriage. He'd stayed for us kids until he found out that she'd been emptying their retirement accounts to support my sister's failed modeling career. The parallels to my situation were eerie. "Your mother always favored Denise," he said quietly. "I tried to balance it out by spending more time with you, but after the divorce, I lost that daily influence." He showed me a box of birthday cards and letters he'd sent me over the years, cards I'd never received because my mother had intercepted them. Another betrayal on top of everything else. I consulted with the best divorce attorney in New York, who assured me I had a rock-solid case for financial fraud. I meticulously documented everything, set up my own bank accounts, secured a new apartment, and prepared for war. The attorney, Ms. Goldstein, was ruthless in a way I deeply appreciated. Men like your husband think they're brilliant until they face a woman who's done her homework, she said during our first meeting. She helped me understand exactly what I was entitled to and how to secure it. The recording alone would give us leverage, but combined with the financial evidence, he's screwed. Her confidence was the first thing that had made me smile in weeks. 2 months after the baby was born, I made my move. I waited until Stephen was at work, packed my essential belongings, and left divorce papers on the kitchen table along with printed evidence of his affair and financial fraud. I included a USB drive with the hospital recording. Then I checked into my new apartment and waited. The meltdown was spectacular. Stephen called screaming, then pleading, then threatening. My sister left hysterical voicemails. My mother showed up at my office causing a scene so embarrassing that security had to remove her. I spoke to none of them, directing all communication through my attorney. Stephen's first voice message is still saved on my phone. Rachel, what the fuck? How could you do this? We need to talk right now. As if I was the one who had done something wrong. His tone shifted dramatically in the second message. Baby, please, we can work this out. Whatever you think you know, it's not the whole story. Just call me. By the sixth message, he was threatening to destroy my career, my reputation, everything. Classic narcissist playbook. My coworkers at the magazine were incredible throughout the whole ordeal. When my mother showed up screaming at the reception desk, my editor, who knew the basics of what was happening, personally escorted her out while assuring me my job was secure. My writer friends formed a protective circle around me, screening my calls and bringing me meals when I couldn't face leaving my apartment. The divorce proceedings were brutal but swift. With the evidence I had gathered, Stephen had no leg to stand on. The judge was particularly disgusted by the financial fraud angle. In the end, I received a settlement that included our apartment, most of our assets, and additional compensation for the fraudulent misuse of my inheritance. The day in court when the recording was played was both the worst and most validating experience of my life. Watching Stephen, Denise, and my mother squirm as their own voices exposed their conspiracy was grimly satisfying. Stephen's lawyer actually winced and stopped making eye contact with him. The judge, an older woman with steely eyes, looked at them with such contempt that I knew she would rule in my favor. My sister and mother attempted damage control, spinning a story that I was mentally unstable and had always been jealous of Denise. But the evidence was too damning. My mother's friends, her social circle she prized so much, distanced themselves from her. Stephen's firm, with its emphasis on moral character, placed him on leave pending an ethics investigation. Denise, who had quit her modeling career years ago and had been financially dependent on Stephen and my mother, was suddenly facing single motherhood without her safety net. Their desperation became pathetic. My mother tried to twist the narrative with family friends, claiming I had overreacted to a misunderstanding. Denise attempted to paint herself as the victim in social media posts, implying that Stephen had manipulated her, conveniently ignoring the recording where she clearly was an enthusiastic participant. Stephen even tried to claim the recording was illegally obtained and couldn't be used against him, a desperate tactic that failed spectacularly. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding. My work as a journalist had always been my passion, and I threw myself into it. I used part of my settlement to start a foundation for women dealing with fertility issues and financial abuse, two things I now knew far too much about. I began therapy with Dr. Miller, who helped me process the betrayal without letting it define me. Those first therapy sessions were brutal. I'd sit there, unable to speak through my tears, reliving the humiliation and betrayal. Dr. Miller never rushed me. Grief isn't just about death, she explained. You're grieving the loss of your marriage, your family relationships, and the future you thought you had. That's going to take time. She taught me tools for managing the panic attacks that would hit without warning, the insomnia that plagued me, the trust issues that made even casual interactions difficult. The foundation became my lifeline. Working with other women who had experienced similar betrayals helped me feel less alone. We created resources I wish I'd had: guides to financial literacy, connections to ethical attorneys, support groups for those dealing with family estrangement. Channeling my pain into something constructive didn't erase what happened, but it gave it purpose. A year after the divorce, I received an email from my mother begging for reconciliation. She claimed she'd only wanted what was best for Denise, that she never meant to hurt me. I didn't respond. Some betrayals are too profound for forgiveness. That email showed up on a day when I was actually feeling good for the first time in months. I just signed a contract for an investigative piece on financial abuse, my foundation had secured significant funding, and I'd managed to sleep through the night without nightmares. Reading her hollow apologies, "I never thought it would hurt you this much," sent me spiraling again. What did she expect? That I'd be mildly annoyed my husband was having a baby with my sister using my money? My father became an unexpected source of support. He had always been distant, but the shared betrayal brought us closer. We now have dinner every month when I visit Arizona, slowly building the relationship we never had when I was growing up. He introduced me to his wife, Claire, a kind woman who seemed genuinely interested in knowing me. Unlike the competitive dynamic with my mother and sister, there was no tension with Claire. She showed me old photos my father had kept of me growing up, school plays, sports events he'd attended without my knowledge because my mother had told him he wasn't welcome. We were rebuilding a family connection I never knew I could have. As for Stephen and Denise, their relationship imploded 6 months after the divorce. Without me to deceive and my money to fund their lifestyle, the fantasy collapsed. Stephen moved to Chicago to escape the professional humiliation. Denise moved back in with my mother, their codependence stronger than ever. According to mutual friends, who now exclusively took my side, their relationship dissolved into bitter arguments about money. With Stephen's career in tatters and their financial pipeline for me cut off, reality hit hard. He blamed Denise for being indiscreet, and she blamed him for not covering their tracks better. Neither took actual responsibility for what they'd done. Last I heard, Stephen was working for a much smaller firm in Chicago, having lost his partnership track position, while Denise was trying to monetize her single mom journey on Instagram. Karma's not enough, but it's something. The baby, my nephew, technically, is the innocent party in all this. Sometimes I look at the single photo I have of him and wonder if I'll ever want to know him. He has my grandmother's eyes. Maybe someday when he's older. I struggle with thoughts about him. He didn't choose his parents. He didn't participate in their deception. But seeing him would mean engaging with Denise and my mother, and I'm not ready for that. My therapist says that's a decision that doesn't need to be made now, or even in the next few years. Time may change things, or it may not. Either way, it's my choice on my timeline. I've started dating again recently. Nothing serious, but it's progress. 2 years ago, I couldn't imagine ever trusting anyone again. Now I can at least envision the possibility. My therapist says that's significant growth. The first date I went on after everything was a disaster. I had a panic attack in the restaurant bathroom when he mentioned wanting kids someday. The second and third weren't much better. I found myself interrogating perfectly nice men about their financial habits and relationships with their siblings. But gradually, it got easier. I'm learning to trust my instincts again, to recognize genuine decency, to be open to connection without immediately suspecting ulterior motives. There's a guy I've been seeing for a few weeks now. Mark is a photojournalist I met through work. He knows the broad strokes of my story and doesn't push for details I'm not ready to share. He's patient when I need to take things slow, transparent about his life in a way that feels reassuring rather than performative. I don't know if it will lead anywhere, but for the first time, I'm not overthinking every interaction or waiting for the betrayal. That feels like victory. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself, it was realizing that the people who should have loved me the most were willing to sacrifice my happiness, my finances, and my dream of motherhood for their own selfish desires. I still don't understand how my own mother could participate in such cruelty. Some days the anger feels as fresh as it did that night in the hospital. There are still mornings when I wake up and the grief hits me like a physical force. Not grief for Stephen, I'm long past that. But grief for the family I thought I had. The mother who I believed loved me unconditionally. The sister I thought was just difficult, not malicious. The future with children that might never happen now. On those days, I let myself feel it all, then get up and keep moving forward anyway. I dream about them sometimes. Not nightmares exactly, but unsettling dreams where we're all together at a family dinner pretending nothing happened. I always wake up from those dreams with my heart racing, needing to remind myself that I got out, that I know the truth now, that I don't have to pretend anymore. The relief that follows is profound. But I refuse to let their actions define the rest of my life. I'm building something new from the ashes they left behind. My foundation has helped dozens of women escape financially abusive relationships. My journalism has shifted toward investigating financial fraud. I guess I've become something of an expert through experience. And I'm considering options for becoming a mother on my own terms: adoption, fostering, or donor sperm. Last month, I mentored a woman going through almost exactly what I experienced. Hearing her story was like looking in a mirror to the past. I was able to guide her to resources, connect her with my attorney, and help her secure her financial future before confronting her cheating husband. Watching her transform from a terrified, confused victim to an empowered woman taking control of her life was profoundly healing. Maybe that's the silver lining in all this: the ability to help others navigate what I had to figure out alone. I'm not the same naive woman who stood outside that hospital room 2 years ago. I'm stronger, yes, but also warier. I value honesty above almost anything now. And I've learned that sometimes family is not defined by blood, but by who stands with you when your world is falling apart. My chosen family has become so important. My coworkers who shielded me from my mother's public meltdown. My father and his wife who opened their home to me when I needed escape. The women in my support group who understand exactly what this kind of betrayal feels like. My therapist who has guided me through the darkest periods. We create family through love and support, not just genetics. That's something my mother never understood. If you've read this far, thank you. Writing it all out has been cathartic in a way I didn't expect. If you're going through something similar, know that there is a way forward. It won't be easy, and you won't be the same person on the other side, but you can rebuild. Focus on what you can control. Document everything. Find allies. And remember that their betrayal speaks to their character, not your worth. Sometimes I look back at pictures from before, family holidays, my wedding day, casual dinners with Stephen, and I can't recognize the woman I was then. She looks happy but unaware, confident but misplaced. I don't miss her exactly, but I do mourn for how cruelly she was awakened. If I could tell her anything, it would be to trust her instincts more and to value herself enough not to accept scraps of affection from people incapable of true love. Yesterday, I ran into a distant cousin who hadn't heard about the family drama. She asked about Stephen, about when we were planning to have children. For the first time, I was able to give a brief explanation without feeling like I might shatter. Progress is rarely linear, but it does come. 2 years ago, I was a woman whose entire life had been built on quicksand. Today, I'm standing on solid ground I created myself. I have a career I'm proud of, a foundation that's making real difference, friends who proved themselves loyal during the worst time of my life, and a growing sense that the future holds possibilities rather than threats. I'm not who I was, and most days, I'm grateful for that. So that's my story. The ultimate betrayal and the painstaking rebuilding that followed. Life after devastating loss isn't about getting back what you had, it's about creating something new with what remains. And despite everything, I'm still here. Still building. Still moving forward.